Greetings and welcome to Abstract Essay, where the essay shape, thoughts find depth, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. She is a Christian author, a podcast host, and a mission to be a joyful and backhand the devil. None than please Wanda Thibodeaux. Welcome, Miss Wanda on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here. As you said, I am a Christian author. I mainly work in the business space. That's where I do most of my writing. I work with a lot of professionals doing books, thought leadership articles, that kind of work. But in my personal writing, I really focus on the Christian side. So for that, I my theme right now is really focused on joy. I really want to get that idea across to people, and so that's really what I'm about, is just reconnecting people to God and the joy that He brings.
The joy we bring, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you. And today, let's talk about unlearning the lie of earned worth. So, let's start with the foundation or foundational definition. What exactly the lie of earned worth? And how does it
So
typically show up for someone internal monologue or daily life?
yeah, so really the way that I would define it is you have this idea that everything that you are, all of your value really comes from doing things. Now, whatever you do, that can vary a lot. But it's really just that the more jobs you do, the more value you have. And I think some of that can come from culture. I think some of it can come from just, the way that we are brought up. But it's kind of very insidious, but it is really this concept that we need to perform to have worth.
Where do you believe this pervasive lie originates? Is it more a product of capitalist structures, familial conditioning, or a religious upbringing or educational system that tie praise to performance?
I think all of those things really play together. Is in my case personally, when I was growing up, I had a lot of things going on at home that the situation was basically that I really had no other way to basically get attention other than performing. So I did really well in school. I was in music. I was doing all of these things because really that was the only way that I was ever noticed for anything, whether it was by my parents or the teachers. But I learned very quickly that that was a way to set myself apart. For me, that's kind of where that solidified. But definitely, I think culture plays a role in it because we equate identity and success with what we do. So, like you said, with capitalistic America, we say that if you try hard enough, you'll win. So, if you try and you don't win, then something must be wrong with you, or you have nothing of value to
Mm.
contribute. That's kind of the message that we get. And even, we are taught as kids, even in school, we hand the kid the trophy for the spelling bee or whatever, and the kid remembers that. Now, there's nothing wrong with encouraging a kid, you know what I mean, like that. But the danger is if that's the only time that anybody notices the child. That's the real differentiation. If they only get it there, then that's when they learn to associate doing with attention and love.
Yes, definitely. And how does these lie get disguised as a virtue? In what ways do we mistake the exhausting pursuit of earning our place for ambition, responsibility, or strong character?
Well, I think again, it comes back to that cultural message because if we are working, we equate all of these good things with working. So, we can provide for our families, we can get the house that we need for shelter. And so it's like we couple it with these very positive things. to the extent that we don't see that it's doing damage and we don't see that it's kind of eroding our worth and that we are pinning ourselves to the worth and the work that much that if the work was taken away, we would feel lost. And that's really to me the test is like if you take that work away, what would you do? How would you feel about yourself? And if you can't think of anything to define yourself with aside from the work, then that's where you know you've really got an issue.
The cause of conditional worth. What are the most common emotional, relational, and physical symptoms you see in people, especially in high achievers who are operating under these belief even they are appear successful?
Well,
Hmm.
I can speak from my own experience, but what I see in other people a lot too is but really it comes off as people pleasing. These are the people who they are so dependable. You ask them to do something, they are there, they are with it. They always take on the projects. They never say no because they give this impression that they can. And the thing is, they often do. They're often very, very qualified, like you said, very high achieving, and they manage to get the things done. And because of that, people learn that they are dependable. So they keep asking, can you do this extra thing? Can you do one more thing? And then they don't even ask how the person is. They just
Hmm.
ask, can you do more? And so then the person who is doing, they learn that, well, they're only paying attention to me because I said yes to this project. And so then the fear kind of creeps in, well, if I say no, what's going to happen? How is that connection going to be? Like they fear that that's going to just crack and break.
Yes, crack and break, and definitely true. And how does this framework sabotage authentic connection? Does it teach us to relate to others transactionally or constantly assessing what we must bring to the table to be worthy of love or belonging?
That's a really excellent question. I do think that it makes things very transactional because, like I said, the expectation is that if I do this thing, if I perform, if I do the work, then you will pay attention to me. Then you will see me, even though you're not really seeing me because all you're seeing me is my performance, right? You're not seeing anything else about me, but that's the expectation. And so we kind of substitute the work or we use work as a substitute for that intimacy and we never really learn if that's what we're doing like if we're just using the work to connect we never really learn to show who we really are all we learn to show is our ability to work so nobody really knows how we are nobody knows who we really are and everything is very superficial because of that we can't really get into the core of who we are with anybody.
Of who we are in everybody. That's interesting and empowering answer. Yes. And can you describe the cycle of burnout, self recrimination, and anxiety this life fuels? What is the ultimate unsustainable?
Well, when you are in this cycle, basically the mindset is kind of like we were describing. Um, if I don't work, if I don't perform, then things crumble around me. I'm not going to have people who pay attention to me. I'm not going to have the security because people mean security, right? You want to be part of a group. So everything becomes very dark very quickly because we catastrophize and we imagine everything just being lost if we don't perform that task. And we have this way, I think, of, um, even if it's a small task, we attach a big result to it. So even it's like, hey, can you pick my kids up at the bus stop? That's not a big ask. But we imagine to ourselves, well, if I say no to that, they're going to leave me and all this stuff is going to happen. And that's totally not true. But our brain just, makes all these connections and very quickly we go there, right? We get into that space. And it's very hard to crawl out of that. Um, and part of that, too, I think, is because we get the reward so much when we do it, then it kind of reinforces things in our brain. Oh, well, that worked, right? So then we
Yes.
think we have to keep doing it to get the good result. We get afraid to break the pattern that we have because we don't know for sure if we're gonna if what we fear is going to come true, and we'd rather not risk it.
Rather not to reset the unlearning process, Miss Wanda. What is
Hmm.
often the first destabilizing crack in this belief system for someone? Is it failure, a therapist question, or a moment of exhaustion where the math simply stops adding up?
I think, well, I know for me personally, it was exhaustion. Like I just could not do it anymore. I do understand the 90-hour weeks. I've been there, and you reach a point where you can, like, you want to, like I said, that beast inside of you saying, "Oh, I got to do it," right? But you reach a point where you just physically can't, and mentally, like your brain just shuts down. You
Hmm.
start to realize that you are too stressed, and your body resists that. Your brain just shuts down and says, "No more." And so when you reach that place, then you have to say, okay, well, if I can't work, what's the alternative? Because I can't keep going the way that I am. Right. And so then you have to find these ways of testing kind of what happens and dipping your toe in the water. If I pull back here, what happens? If I say no, what really happens? And kind of check that against your thought pattern. Because most of the time, what happens when you test it is what, like I said, what you fear doesn't happen. So you're really looking for that confirmation. Oh, I can let go a little bit, but it's really hard to get there. But it does take challenging the notion that our beliefs that kind of underride this, we can't take them at face value anymore. Like we have to question that, because much of what we believe around this is really constructed stuff, like we talked about. Like it's from culture, it's even subconsciously built. Like we're reinforcing it ourselves sometimes. So there's a lot to it.
Miss Wanda, unlearning is active. What does a practical daily work of dismantling this core belief look like? Is it more about catching thoughts, changing behavior, or somatic practices?
I would say the biggest thing on a daily basis that you can do, one, take breaks, because breaking that chain of, oh, I got to work all the time, like even small things like that matter. Just get up and move, right? Get away from the desk. Yes, you can, right? And just reinforcing that for yourself. But the other thing for me, at least, is trying to reconnect with people. Like we had talked a little bit, about how it gets superficial. So if you can say, I'm not going to just work, I need to show them something aside from my performance. So maybe I can start showing that I actually have a sense of humor. Maybe I can share a hobby that I do. But you're starting to talk about things that have nothing to do with jobs, nothing to do with tasks. So they get to know you, and you're making those connections outside of what you do so that it becomes more grounded and people actually see the real person.
The real person indeed. And Miss Wanda, a huge fear is that without the drive to earn, worth will become lazy or complacent. How does she respond to that? What actually motivates a person operating from inherent worth?
I would say that if you, like, things need to be balanced, right? And if you are constantly working and you're constant, like, there is a difference between working because you are motivated and like you feel positively obligated to something, like that's good motivation. There's a difference between that and doing something out of fear because you're scared that of what will happen if you don't. So I think we just need to differentiate and just ask yourself, what am I scared of? Am I scared of anything? Because if the answer is fear, then that's a sign that, like, you really do attach your value to what you're doing. But if you're saying, I can really identify that I'm doing this for, my family, or I'm doing it because I value the environment or whatever it is, then that's beyond you. That's bigger than you. And that's really what you're looking for.
That is bigger than you, for sure. And what role does grieving play in this process? Grieving the time lost, the relationship strain, or pure joy missed while operating under this old contract?
It's an interesting question. I can tell you in my own experience, it's very difficult when you realize what you've been doing. and how much you've been working and how much fear has played into that, you really kind of like it kind of hits you like, oh my goodness, I have wasted so much time, so much opportunity to be with people because that's all you're doing is all you're working, right? And no, nobody's really seeing it. And like, so you kind of see all of these opportunities that were lost because of, and you see, what life could have been like if you just would have stepped away from the desk, right? And so you have to really reconcile yourself to that. Now, that being said, you cannot go back, right? You can't fix that, but you can, with intentionality, say today's going to be different. From this point going forward, and like I said, little small changes. I'm going to get up, every 30 minutes and walk away for 5 minutes. Whatever it is, you can be intentional to break that pattern.
Intentional to break the pattern for sure. So, how does someone start to receive a complaint, a gift, or help without immediately feeling the need to pay it back or disqualify it?
Well, if I understand your question correctly, I think it, the idea that you have to earn whatever you get, that is a
Yes.
very difficult idea to break. Like that's hard. um, but I think, like I said, when we were talking about connection, the more experiences that you have, that people don't leave you just because like that matters. That experience, you feel that, and that encodes in your brain that feeling is different than what you had experienced before. um, so I really think that when you're trying to get over this, you really need to key into what you are feeling and those emotions of those experiences that you have with people, because the more of those that you have that are positive, the more that you can kind of relax and say, "Oh, it's okay. Like I don't have to work for them to pay attention to me. Like they like other things about me. They just like the experience of me." And that's a completely different thing to take in.
Yes, definitely. In a world that constantly measures and monetizes value, how do you protect this new knowing on a daily basis? What does this maintenance look like?
I know for me, it has been really drawing hard boundaries because, like you said, people will push you to do more. And that's the thing. When people realize that you will perform and you will say yes, they will ask you to. They absolutely will. But that is where you have to draw the line and really attach to your own values and know why you are saying no. Like, I am doing that for my own mental health. I'm doing that so I can spend time with my family. Whatever it is, whatever your reason is, like just ground yourself to that. It's very difficult to do on a repeated basis, but the more that you draw those lines and you are consistent in them, people will learn. They will learn that they can't just walk all over you anymore and do what they used to. Like, but you've got to be consistent and just communicate that really well.
Be consistent indeed. And how important is a community or witness in the unlearning? Can you truly see our own inherent worth without being reflected back to us by others?
I love this question.
Hmm.
I think that, in American culture at least, we do have this idea that we are very independent, we can do anything, right? But there is this idea of the mirror. And that is basically the idea that part of our sense of identity comes from the feedback from other people. Like we need other people to kind of get a sense of who we are. Now, some people will debate that, but that's the concept. Okay. And so when we are looking at this, I really think that we cannot do things in a vacuum. We cannot conceptualize ourselves on our own. So when we are trying to heal from this, like I said, we need that feedback to say, you are okay when you don't work. And the more connections that you have with other people, the more experiences you have that are outside of work that have nothing to do with tasks, that's going to make a real difference. And again, that consistency. It's not just, oh, I met with somebody this week. It's, I met with somebody this week and the next week and the week after that, because your brain needs that repeated pattern to unlearn that pattern that you knew before.
To unlearn. Yes, definitely. Broader implication and moving forward, Miss Wanda. If we collectively unlearn this lie, how might it transform our workplaces, educational institution, and family dynamics?
I would say when we don't focus so much on what people can do, like we're valuing them because of the performance, things just get really a whole lot more compassionate real fast. Because when we are measuring them by quotas, we have a real tendency to put more and more pressure on them to raise the bar all the time. So if you've, done 10, the next day you've got to do 11, right? And it never stops. It never stops. But if you take away that you are attached to what you do, then you start asking questions like, how are you? Right?
Hmm.
And so like
Yes.
it changes the focus so much, and you start seeing how people connect rather than just what the process is of what you're doing. And so people start to see that they contribute as people, not as experts, but as people. There's a difference.
As people, indeed. And what is the most resistant or challenging pushback you get when teaching this concept, and how do you respond?
The biggest thing that people say to me is that, like you said, that everything is very performative. That's just how our economy works. That's just how we're set up. But to that, I would say we are only set up to the way that we allow. Like if we challenge that construct and we say, this is the way that I'm going to work, I'm not going to follow that anymore. I'm going to work differently. And you build the process differently. You build the way you interact differently. You can change it. But again, it comes back to that intentionality. You have to choose it, and you have to communicate, this is why we're doing it. Because if people aren't behind that and they don't really get it, they're going to default to what they know. They're going to default to what we've always done.
Yes, interesting, interesting, Miss Wanda. Looking at social media and comparison culture, how does the lie and earn worth exploit and amplify our insecurities in the digital age? Hmm.
So what I see there a lot, and I will admit, I'm on social media a lot just because of what I do. Um, but what I see people talk about anyway, and what I see in the feeds is that people are always trying to note what they have done. That it is always trying to note the next performance that they've got or achievement. And so I think it creates this culture of, I don't want to say one-upmanship, but like maybe keeping up with the Joneses is a better way to put it, where everybody is like, oh, well, if they set the standard there, like I said, 10 versus 11, right? We get so scared by what we're seeing that we say, oh, well, if everybody's doing that, then I've got to do this. But what we don't realize is that it's kind of a mirage. Half the stuff that we see on social media is not there. Like people make it up because they think it looks good. so so we don't have to work nearly as hard as we think we do just because that's the picture that people are putting out. Right? And I really want to get that across. Like I mean, people are doing some great things. Don't get me wrong, but I think we really need to question how much is really valid and just be discerning around that.
Yes, how much? That's the question. How much? And before we wrap up our discussion for today, Miss Wanda, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season. Abstract Poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101, love letters, movie 101, music 101 are fourth season, science 101, sex 101 in second season, and my baby podcast Low 101, mental health 101. Bible verses 101, and coming this December, Entrepreneur 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So Miss Wanda, tell us, for someone listening who feels this resonate but is terrified to let it go of their earning mindset, what is this small radical of change would you like to give them?
I would recommend that they do one thing less in the day. Just one thing, like whatever it is on their to-do list. I mean, some things, like you can't let them drop, especially if it's a work-related thing. But just say something that you're saying, "Oh, well, I gotta do it." Do you really? Let it drop, see what happens, because I can guarantee you the world is not gonna stop spinning. And again, it's just about having that experience that the world doesn't stop spinning. Like we need to reinforce that, right? But you choose something small, like really small, like, oh, I'm not going to make my bed today. I'm not like that small, okay? And you just try it. Just try it. Little things, and I'm not saying, that you become a slob or get totally off your responsibilities. I'm just saying you choose something that you normally think you have to do and you challenge it. That's really what I'm saying is challenge the idea by challenging the task.
Challenging the idea is something else, people. And Miss Wanda, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your podcast, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Sure. I have a book, Grace in the Grind, that has just come out. That is available on Amazon. So I would encourage people to check that out. But if you just want to connect on with me, you can go to LinkedIn. I'm on there, and there is a featured post there that basically says everywhere else that I am. You can also check my author website, which is wandathibodeaux.com, or my faith based writing at faithfulontheclock.com.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Wanda Thibodeaux because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering books to come, more and more empowering episodes of the podcast itself. So, Miss Wanda, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This has been a pleasure.
Likewise, more to come, people. See you soon.